Trauma Treatment Collective vlog. Today we're going to be talking about how to work with disassociation. When you're thinking about working with trauma, more than likely you're going to run into disassociation. Disassociation is kind of like a continuum. That's how I like to think about it. You can go from that fuzzy feeling on this side of the continuum to definitely that fragmentation within the personality on this side of the continuum. And so when you're thinking about it, disassociation can show up in the therapy room in many different ways. Some of the common diagnosis with disassociation is PTSD, depersonalization, derealization, and dissociative identity disorder. And so when we're thinking about disassociation and working with it in the therapy room, if we're not careful and if we're not very observant is the word I'd like to use, if we're not very observant, then we can actually be working with a client in a dissociative state, which means that they're dysregulated. And so therefore, this is not a safe state to work with them in when we're trying to treat trauma. So some things you might want to consider. You definitely want to become master trackers, and you want to teach your clients to become master trackers. You want to know what the triggers are. So what kinds of conversation triggers it, what kinds of thoughts or feelings might trigger it, and you want to know what it feels like in the body for the client. So you want to help the client to start noticing what it feels like in the body, and then you also want to start to notice what it looks like from the outside when you're observing the client. So maybe they become more, their eyes gaze off into the distance, or maybe they become more frozen, like this part of their body begins to be more rigid, or their legs are not moving as much. Those could be signs and symptoms of disassociation. The other thing you want to do is provide psychoeducation. So when you're thinking about psychoeducation, the thing I use is the nervous system. And I really help clients to begin to understand the autonomic nervous system. And I help them to understand that basically disassociation or freeze is what I like to term it. Sometimes disassociation can sometimes be a little threatening to clients. But when I phrase it as freeze, that is basically a survival response. That is how they were able to survive the traumatic experience. And so now we are helping the body to reorganize and to reintegrate the experience so that they don't have to just go to freeze. They can have all the other survival responses as well. And lastly, when a client is in a dissociative state or right before they become disassociated, you want to help them to establish or reestablish safety. Some of the ways I do that is using coping skills. So helping clients to use aromatherapy, so smelling things that are safe for them or help them to regulate, helping them to use their body, so being able to move. We might throw the ball back and forth, or we might go for a walk, or we might do some pushing on the wall to engage the body. Again, within the session. I also use grounding activities, so helping clients to feel parts of their body that feel most present in that moment, or things that feel weighted. I may help them to use temperature to ground, so helping them to feel things that are cold or warm. And so we'll play around with that to figure out what's best for them. When you're able to help a client begin to start to catch disassociation before it moves into full-blown disassociation, as well as to get out of disassociation if they do find themselves in a full-blown dissociative state, this is very empowering to them. It's very helpful in their trauma treatment to begin to see that they can move themselves from that state and that they have control and an ability to cope with that. So that's it for today.